The Trump administration has warned Canada it could face severe economic consequences after trade talks between Washington and Ottawa broke down. New 50% U.S. tariffs have taken effect on about $20 billion worth of Canadian goods, while Ottawa plans matching levies on selected American products. The United States accounts for roughly 70% of Canadian exports leaving Ottawa, exposed to prolonged trade tensions. Prime Minister Mark Carney has defended Canada's response and criticized U.S. demands. The escalating dispute threatens one of the world's most integrated trading relationships, with businesses on both sides facing higher costs and possible job losses. Now, to discuss this, we are joined by global affairs analyst Alexander von Rugen. Alexander, thank you so much for joining us on the news. Now, what is driving the Trump administration's increasingly aggressive trade posture towards Canada?
Well, I think it's the reluctance of Canada to give in. I mean, he has postured himself for America first, but Canada is in a unique situation. You can't compare it to any other country that the U.S. is imposing tariffs on. Our societies are intertwined. We have the largest common border in the world, unprotected. And many of our industries are so intertwined, such as the automotive, certain parts cross the border 7 times before they actually end up in an automobile or a truck. And to unravel that with tariffs, blatant tariffs across an industry sector without additional thought is really what Canada's fighting for here. So they're posturing themselves. Trump's got an election coming up. He wants Canada to give in, and we're not. The talks came to a screeching halt when there was a last-minute demand by America to thwart our trading activities with other countries, which was, I guess, an attack on Canadian sovereignty.
Now, tell me, how would a full-scale U.S.-Canada trade war affect the economic relationship between the two countries?
Well, we'd migrate from free trade to adversarial economic conflict. And it would be a lot of chaos for a lot of industries. Now, I might add the new 50% tariffs that Trump has added on only affect about 5% of Canadian product, which in the scope of things may not be much, but it does affect small businesses that are manufacturing. The big picture is that Trump wants to renegotiate the USMCA, which is the United States, Mexico, Canada free trade agreement, and wants to renegotiate percentages of American content in primarily the automotive industry, and get additional concessions on agriculture and energy.
Now, tell me, Alexander, which sectors of the Canadian economy would be most vulnerable to higher U.S. tariffs or other even trade restrictions?
Most definitely automotive. They're covered under the current treaty, but if the treaty gets thrown out the window, then that's going to put it into chaos. That affects a large amount of factory workers, primarily in Ontario. The lumber industry in BC is another big factor. It amounts to over 35% of all lumber imported into the United States. Our aluminum industry is 85% of American aluminum. Our steel industry, and then, of course, our agricultural. We're a leading provider of U.S. fertilizers through our potash in Saskatchewan, about 85% of their imports. That is notwithstanding the smaller Canadian manufacturers and service providers to large American companies.
I'd like to know, what is the strategic significance of Canada adopting dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs against U.S. goods?
Well, it's designed to get their attention. Now, Canada historically will not impose tariffs on their own people. We have to understand a tariff is not something the supplying country pays. It's a tax imposed on the citizens of the receiving country. So if America puts tariffs on Canadian products, it's American manufacturers and consumers that pay that tariff, increasing the price of the Canadian imports. The idea is that it's going to stimulate further growth in America where they won't rely on imports and hopefully build more factories and competitive products to offset the imports. But on some things you can't replicate. For example, if you were to impose a tariff on coffee, coffee is not produced in America. It would just be another tax on the American people because they cannot replicate coffee in America. With Canadian aluminum, it's a similar case. Aluminum is produced by two components, bauxite and electricity. Both Canada and the United States import the bauxite, so they're on a level playing field there. But Canada has an abundance of cheap hydroelectric power, which is green. Its cost is about 2.9 cents per kilowatt versus 19 cents to 29 cents in America. So even if there were to be an aluminum factory set up in America, they couldn't compete with the Canadian aluminum. So it would not make sense to tariff that product. In other words, you're punishing your own manufacturers and you're thwarting a manufacture which gets exported to many, many more countries outside of the United States on all components that utilize aluminum as a seed material.
All right, just to wrap up this conversation, I'd like to know how effective can matching tariffs be as a negotiating tool against the United States of America?
Well, the best way to sum it up, it's MAD, mutually assured destruction across both sides of the border for the affected industries. One would hope that it becomes a catalyst to reason, to get back to the negotiating table, discuss things that are on a fair playing field and are most beneficial to both countries. And we would hope that will be the outcome of this retaliatory action.
All right, Alexander Van Rugen, thank you so much for joining us on the news.